दोबारा स्टार्ट। Hello. So hello everyone. Today we will start with Unit 8, okay, which is your research methods in anthropology, which is from paper 1. So there are 4 subunits. First is fieldwork tradition and anthropology. Yes, okay, thanks. Distinction between technique, method, methodology, tools of data collection and analysis and presentation of data. So as per the trends of exam, we find that from subtopic 1 and subtopic 3 questions have been regularly asked. So be sure that question from topic 1 and topic 3 are going to come in the examination. Okay, from topic 3 question will be directly asked. From topic 1 the words can be molded a bit, but the essence will remain same. Okay, that is one thing. Rarely questions come on analysis and presentation of data, also on distinction between these 3, because when you will be writing upon fieldwork tradition, you will automatically come to know about the distinction between technique, method and methodology. Okay, so we will start with fieldwork tradition in anthropology, that how fieldwork okay. Okay, so we will first have a distinction between 3 things: fieldwork, ethnography and ethnology. It's important for us to know about these 3 terms before understanding how fieldwork as a tradition, it evolved in anthropology, and anthropology as a discipline, it rests upon the fundamentals of fieldwork. So fieldwork means an anthropologist, they go to a particular place, a site which they select, and this site can be geographical as well as a digital site nowadays. Okay, he or she goes there, collect data using certain methods, they learn the local language, they converse with people, okay, they test their hypothesis if they have created one, then come back with all of that data, okay, after spending a considerable period of time, especially 1 year. Okay, we normally give it 1 year. Once you have all the data which you collected from fieldwork, and when you compile all of that data, you analyze it, you interpret it using a theoretical foundation such as cultural evolution, functionalism, structural functionalism, any of the any of the anthropological theory which you find can suit your data, you generate a text of that, you generate a snapshot of that culture. Okay, you generate a snapshot of culture, because when we talk of ethnography, we are talking about the experiences of an anthropologist who was here and now, or you are trying to portray some experiences which are called as I was there experience. Okay, that I was there, then only I can tell you that how this data came into being. If I took someone's interview while I was doing field work, yes, class abhi start hua Shubham, so I can tell you because I was there. And when you are at a particular place spending years of time, you are not just dwelling into the past of that society, you are also looking at what can be expected in coming years. Okay, if someone else come, what can be expected from the data which you have collected, whether the policies which you have studied while you are doing your field work, whether they will be evolving given the present state or whether they will decline. That will be, you will leave certain questions unanswered. Okay, that is up to you, that how do you approach that. Once you have collected all of the data and presented it, the result comes in form of ethnography. For example, Malinowski's ethnography of Trobriand Islanders, Argonauts of the Western Pacific. Okay, Margaret Mead's ethnography of Samoa, coming of age in Samoa. Clifford Geertz ethnography. Anyone know the name of Clifford Geertz ethnography? No one? Heard of Clifford Geertz? Clifford Geertz? You must be knowing him. Remember? Definition of religion? He is that person. Okay. So there are many more. There are there are a lot of anthropologists. There is. So he studied in Java. We'll deal with him. We'll talk with. We talk about Clifford Geertz, that how he changed the whole course of ethnography or fieldwork tradition in anthropology. So initially, and yes, when we have multiple ethnographies in place, and when we study these ethnographies, comes your ethnology. Okay. So comparative studies of ethnographies or ethnology. Snapshot of the field work presented is ethnography. Okay. No. See, what do the word face to face means? Experiencing the things, is it same? See, there are two things, experiencing and observing. Everybody sees, but not everybody observes. Okay, that's what anthropology is all about. It's all about observing. Okay. Experiences can be different, but observations can be different for sure. We'll deal with that. So, you see, when we say face-to-face study, what we are actually trying to convey? That it is a face-to-face study. We are saying that, okay, two humans are sitting in front of each other and you are doing a study. But when we talk of doing field work, you are not always in contact with face-to-face with individuals. At times, you take a place, you take a back seat where all you can do is observe those people. Silence is a method of study. When we talk of non-verbal communication, silence is a method of study. You just identify a space from where you can observe each of them. Okay. For example, we are doing Unit 8. Let me give a small example of this. Jeremy Bentham. So this concept of surveillance, when we say Jeremy Bentham, he talks about that. You see, in prison, there is an entity like this. A guard is sitting here, okay? And he can observe all the prisoners and their behavior just by sitting here. He is having a gaze. He can observe the behavior of all the prisoners who are there. Without even the knowledge of prisoners, he can know about their behavior. That's how surveillance works. Without even knowing that, you are being observed. You are being observed. Okay, that's how that things are done. Here we are not doing surveillance, although we are. I'm trying to explain you that you identify a position at times just to observe what is going on around you. Different kind of participations when we talk about, we'll deal with that. But let's now begin with, like, as we know that anthropology, it's a field science. Without going to field, we cannot gather data. Be it biological anthropology, you have to go to collect blood samples. Be it the fossil sites, you have to go and collect fossils of human skeletons, teeth, anything. Be it archaeological anthropology, where you have to go to the cultural site to collect artifacts belonging to different cultures. Be it linguistic anthropology, where you have to go to different sites to know how people pronounce some things, and also how there are linguistic differences between individuals, how there are social inequalities with respect to language, all of that. And social anthropology, as we know, that it is more or less dependent upon the field work itself. So every branch of anthropology is dependent upon field work. Even if you are going to a hospital to collect blood samples, that amounts to your field work in anthropology. Okay, a place where you are spending time collecting data using certain techniques, okay, and having a nature and scope of inquiry. So we generate data from real experiences and knowledge of individuals. That is one another thing in that. And second is that field work is central to the inquiry of anthropology. It is the central to inquiry of anthropology, without which you cannot generate data. In that line, Margaret Mead, she is known for her work Coming of Age in Samoa. Okay, Coming of Age in Samoa. This is her work. So she says that, just write it down, this is a very important quote. We still have no way to make an anthropologist except by sending him into the field, and this contact with living material is our distinguishing mark. So when we say fieldwork is the hallmark of anthropology, we are talking about that it is our distinguishing mark. So a very important quote. The question on fieldwork tradition in anthropology comes, do mention this. Okay, that in order to make an anthropologist, we have to send him into the field, we do not have any other option apart from that. Okay. The word field, you see, it is a ready-made laboratory. It is a laboratory, ready-made laboratory. Okay. For the researcher. So let's go back in time and see how fieldwork has evolved in form of a story. So you see, in earlier times, especially during 1800s, when late 1700s, when European powers, the colonial powers, they started capturing different lands, the lands which are alien to them. Okay. In order to administer those lands, they used to send certain missionaries, certain amateur field workers to collect data about the customs of the people around them. Okay. All of those lands were alien to them. They have no idea that how these people, how these people live, what are their belief systems. But the inherent okay, I'll do that, don't worry. So the thing is, these colonial administrators, they have an inherent mindset of racial superiority, the white man's burden, as we call it. Okay, they have that they have this inherent disbelief of their superiority. And when the data was collected by these amateurs, the missionaries, they were at times fragmented, it was exaggerated, it was incomplete, all of that. And based on that data, reports were prepared at those times. So at those times, there were two kinds of people, or two kinds of anthropologists were there. One was your amateur field workers who used to go to fields, Second was your armchair anthropologist. Your armchair anthropologist. These people, they used to sit in libraries and museums, okay, and write about the colonies or the people they consider as exotic, primitive, remnants of the past, social fossils, all of them, okay. A classic example of armchair anthropologist is the book Golden Bough by James Fraser. This book has been published in multiple volumes from late 1800s to early 1900s. Around 12 volumes have been published of this book, and Fraser, just based on secondary data or data from these missionaries without even going to field, okay, he wrote this Golden Bough where he presented a scheme of evolution of religion, magic and science. That he says, how has the religion evolved? It evolved as the scheme of evolution of religion, magic, religion and science. First came magic, then came religion, and then came science. So just based on speculations, just based on conjectural data, conjectural history, without even going to field, they were writing down your ethnographies. And this is evident from the name of the books which are being published at that point of time. Emile Durkheim's work, Elementary Forms of Religious Life, Ancient Society, Morgan, works like that. So what are the, Primitive Mind, Loewy's work. So all these books, the title themselves were somehow making us feel that there is an inherent ladder of evolution. If they are studying their own society, for example, the British, did they study their own society? No. They went to far off lands. The colonials, they went to far off lands to study, and the titles were more or less the same, to represent a stage of evolution at that point of time. So during initial days, especially late 1800s, evolutionism was in fashion. Morgan, Tyler, although Morgan and Tyler both went to do field work in their initial days, such as E.B. Tyler, he did, he went to an archaeological site in Mexico and published this work. He assisted an archaeologist basically and went to field work and published this. Morgan, L.H. Morgan, another evolutionist. The League of Iroquois, he studied them, okay, and Morgan's work on kinship is one of the most fundamental in anthropology, as we know. So these were earlier attempts to present field work knowledge, but at that point of time the whole notion was about comparative studies. We are comparing the Victorian society with different societies in the world. That's what we were doing, because we were trying to formulate stages of growth from savagery, barbarism to civilization. That's what we were trying to do. Okay, the data which was coming from missionaries, amateur, amateur field workers, traders, and even though the lands which people have not even thought of or they have visited of, they were giving very lucid account of those lands, that they were saying people were having 4 hands, people were having they do not have human bodies completely. So such fragmented imaginations were being presented in the initial times. Okay, and there was biasness, as we all know, in all those works. Exaggerated account. Laypersons were the laypersons were collecting data, and all of that was to the data which was being collected, it all was to shock the Western world with odd and peculiar practices of the primitives. That's what they were trying to do. They were presenting that these people are very exotic, very romanticizing. So initially there was a romanticization of fieldwork through all these attempts. Okay, that was being done. No authentic books were being published for methodological purposes because the discipline has just begun. But in 1874, attempt was made by publication of notes and queries in anthropology. Okay, so here some of the initial information was provided about how fieldwork should be done, who should be the people. Okay, that should be done. So before 1900s, it was more about collection of conjectural data, creation of making an evolutionary ladder, situating people into that ladder, and went away with that. So that was initial stages. But after 1890s, things started changing in fieldwork tradition. After 1890s. So there were certain what we say just give me a moment. Okay, so with coming of your Torres Strait expedition in 1898, which was your Cambridge anthropological expedition. So these people, they went to Pacific, they went to Australia, they went to New Guinea to collect data on different kinds of beliefs of people. And who are the people involved in that? AC Haddon, WHR Rivers, okay, C.G. Seligman, and C.S. Myers. So these are important names in the initial phases of fieldwork. So they went to record the belief systems of different societies in Pacific, Australia, all of those regions. Okay. Among them, Rivers and Haddon, they have a key contribution in anthropology along with Seligman. Seligman was the mentor of Malinowski. AC Haddon, his contribution is for haptic cinematography in those days. Okay. Rivers' contribution was devising of genealogical method in anthropology when he studied the Todas of Nilgiri Hills. Okay. Seligman was mentor of Malinowski. Okay. So this initial expedition, which have people from different backgrounds, people were physicians, they were doctors, geographers were there, biologists were there. So all of these people went to different parts of the world to collect data regarding belief structures of different population groups. But the actual change, it came with coming of French Boas. With coming of French Boas. He was a staunch critique of the evolutionary method, which he believes that was only conjectural history. It has nothing pure in it. It was just a method of proving white man's burden or racial superiority. Okay. He conducted his fieldwork among Inuit of Baffin Island, Canada. Okay. So when he was conducting his field work, he advocated that we should consider a holistic perspective of a society. Means we should undertake archaeological, physical, linguistic as well as social understanding of the society into consideration. That is why the four field approach which we have, which was advocated by Boas, it emerged from his experience of field work. Okay. And Boas, he was one of the first anthropologists who worked with images. Okay. So he studied the Quaitkul, okay, winter ceremony, Quetzalcoatl's winter ceremony at and he collected 173 figures and 26 plates of images. So you see, at a time when only conjectural history was in prominence, evolutionism was in prominence, Boas entered into scene just after your Torres Strait expedition. This man completely changed the course of fieldwork because he advocated that we need to understand the language of the people, we need to have cultural relativism in place. Every society has their own cultural history that we need to understand about. Women should be studied by women because at times there exists a resistance between male and female relations. Not everyone is able to open up with male ethnographers. Initially, you will find that 90% of the ethnographies were written by male anthropologists, where a gendered perspective was missing. Even Malinowski's work, you will find that Trobriand Islanders, it does not have a female perspective in consideration. It was after Annette Weiser's work, all these things came into prominence. So, Boas, he advocated role of female anthropologist. Okay, and his students included Ruth Benedict, Mead, Margaret Mead, all of them. They are the from a feminist anthropology or a female anthropology. These names, they are the hallucinations of them. Okay. So these are festivals basically, kind of festivals. Just like among the Iraqis, there was this portrait system where they used to burn a lot of, artifacts. Similarly, they have their own kind of ceremony. Quetzalcoatl Indians, they have their own ceremonies. Oh, haptic cinematography. Haptics means touch. So identifying how people touch with each other. Doing that cinematographically. That how we should understand what touch systems means. Okay, that was in place at that point of time. So after Boas, when Boas advocated of doing field work from a native's perspective, in 1913 itself, W.H.R. Rivers, so in 1913, edition of Notes and Queries, as I was talking about, new edition of Notes and Queries was published. Okay, in that Rivers said that in order to understand the cultural reality of a particular society, we need to spend at least 1 year in field. So this was before Malinowski's going to field in 1930. Okay, so it was Rivers who initially said that okay, you cannot understand a society without going there, learning their language and living with them. So after Boas came your Rivers, and Rivers also worked among the Todas of Nilgiri Hills. Okay, Todas of Nilgiri Hills, where he devised the genealogical method. Okay, started your World War 1914-15, and a Polish anthropologist by the name of Bronislaw Malinowski Malinowski, he was left stranded on an island in Western Pacific, the Trobriand Islanders. His book, Argonauts of the Western Pacific, it was published in 1922. So he did field work for approximately 31 months. Okay, during the whole course of war, he stayed there in Trobriand Islanders. He studied the Kula exchange. You must have heard of this term, Kula exchange, a system of economic exchange, ceremonial exchange, symbolic exchange among the Trobriand Islanders. Okay, so he studied them, and when he published his book, Argonauts of the Western Pacific, in chapter 1 of that book, on page 25, he said that in order to conduct field work, you need to stay at the field site for approximately longer duration of time, for 1 year, say. You need to learn the language of those people. He learned the language of all those people. Okay, these two are very important things in the whole process. So what Malinowski was trying to say is, and it's important, that we need to grasp the natives' point of view. We need to grasp the natives' point of view, his relation to life, realize his vision of his world. Okay. It's important. So he says that we need to grasp the emic perspective, what the people think, the natives perspective. We need to grab that, and you cannot grab that by having a cultural difference between them. You have to be one of them. Okay, you have to be one of them. You have to be one of them. To be one of them, you need to perform certain tasks. You have to perform certain tasks which the natives perform. You have to go to the field, you have to, clean the dishes, whatever they were trying to do. So Malinowski, when he went to Trobriand Islanders, he pitched his tent in the center of the village, the Omankara village in which he studied. He pitched his tent into the center of the village. Okay, he did that just to grab whatever is happening around. Okay, so anthropology, which started from conjectural history, which went to the veranda, when people like Rivers, Haydn, they used to sit in their verandas, call the participants or the sample people and ask from them that what are their belief systems and all of that. So from there it went to the veranda, and then it came into the field with coming of Malinowski. Now we are in the field. We are not sitting in the veranda. We are going and working out there. Okay, that's what the change Malinowski brought. So from here he devised this functionalist theory, as we all know that. Okay, an insider perspective came into prominence. Conjectural history, or the fragmented accounts of all of that. Okay. So coming of these, then came new methods into prominence. Now what we have is that you are going to field, you are situating yourself there just like Malinowski did. You are collecting data about those people and writing an account from your own perspective. Okay, so the information which is coming is from a researcher's perspective. Whatever data I am collecting, it is something which I have experienced and I am writing about that. Okay, so what Malinowski did was participant observation. That's one of the method where you stay with the community, you perform certain tasks, but still you detach yourself from that. Okay, at certain point of time. Then came your people of culture and personality school. Okay, in which we have Margaret Mead, Ruth Benedict, Gregory Bateson. Okay, these people, they extensively used methods of photography, methods of videography in their researches, which was relatively absent during earlier times. It was only Boas who used the images which were being clicked. They reflected a very, they reflected power differences between the natives and between the researcher. In one of the images, Malinowski is sitting on a chair and the natives are sitting down on the floor. So it is reflecting a difference between a white man and the native individuals. People of cultural personality schools, they try to explain, or they try to grab the actual reality. Grab the actual reality. That is why Mead's work is very famous. Coming of age in Samoa with respect to switching to adolescence, switching to switching of sexuality. It is very famous. That is why. Okay, because they were able to incorporate many methods into one. So triangulation of methods started beginning. So what happens in triangulation is that you are using multiple methods at the same time to generate specific data. Okay, and with basically your visual ethnography, okay, it started emerging. No, there were, before that you have structural functional school, Malinowski school, or functionalism, diffusion of Boas, then you have historical school, all of that. But this is one school which, which explicitly used visual methods, which brought them into prominence. Okay. Then you have people like Oscar Lewis, who advocated use of tape recorder. Okay. Advocated use of tape recorder to when you are taking interviews to collect the data so that you can identify the emotions, because when you are writing, you cannot write what the individual was reacting like, but with the tone, kind of tone an individual speaking in, you can identify what might be the emotions be. Okay, from that part. So he was in favor of using tape recorder. Okay. Yes. With more evolution, with especially when colonies, they started getting independence, especially after 1940s, 50s. The whole narrative of fieldwork started changing around. Now the focus has shifted from primitives to modern society. Those primitives, they have started gaining independence. They are getting independent. Now they will write their own destiny as per their own will, however they want to. And that also led to a change in perception in anthropology. So, with coming of people like Clifford Geertz, would talk about thick description. There were debates of amic and etic in place. Means, when we are talking about describing a society, okay, when we're talking about describing a society, when Geertz was talking about his thick description, he says that we should not only, describe the social understanding or the social reality, but we should also look upon the context in which it is framed. We should not only explain the behaviors, we should also know the social context in which those behaviors are being practiced. For that, he gave example of the Balinese cockfight. Okay, he gave example of Balinese cockfight. That this cockfight, although it was illegal in Java, in the island of Bali, he described this cockfight in such a beautiful manner that one can clearly feel that happening in front of it. One can clearly feel that it is happening in front of them. So you see, the way it has all been contextualized, the social settings in which it has been, you can clearly feel that it is happening in front of you. That was the thick description which Geertz was talking about. So it was completely different from what Malinowski did, what all these people did. Now you're trying to bring an amic perspective, the people's perspective into presentation. There was a crisis in anthropology. Okay, there was a crisis of representation. There was a crisis of representation in anthropology where the debate about who should be represented, whose voice counts. Is it the subjects upon which the fieldwork is being conducted, or it is the researcher whose voice should be given more power? The crisis of representation came into prominence. And in 1986, publication of Writing Cultures, it was a watershed movement which resolved this crisis. Okay, by saying that we cannot ignore the voice of the participants, they have to be the primarily voices which we need to know about. They are the ones to whom we are responsible. They are the ones who have given data to us. That is why it is important to have a reflection of those people into our voices. That is why the concept of polyvocality came into prominence while writing ethnographies. You compare contemporary ethnographies with ethnographies of Malinowski's times. You will find that in those ethnographies, it was only Malinowski who was writing from the perspective he has attained from. But nowadays, you will have different voices coming within that same ethnography. Women will have different voice. Transgenders will have different voices. Each one will have different voices in those ethnographies. So you see the evolution of the whole fieldwork tradition. With coming of post-colonial literature, with coming of post-colonial ethnography, things have started changing. The power balances, they have started negotiating now. Earlier, the researcher has more power over the command, over his respondents. Now, it is more or less equilibrium in nature because you are giving something to the researcher. So, you should have a power to negotiate with that person. Okay, that started coming into place. And in the initial days, when a field worker, when an anthropologist went to a particular field, it was considered as sacrosanct that this field is now the territory of that individual only. Because no other individual can go there. They are so far from that UK or Europe. They were in this Pacific, Australasia, all those places. How will people go? So an anthropologist, for example, Malinowski, he went to Trobriand Islander. So his work will be the final authority. He will be the king of that ethnography, of that particular area, with respect to the data which we have. But when revisited, when certain anthropologists revisited all those areas, for example, in case of Robert Redfield, in case of Mead, and even in case of Malinowski, Oscar Lewis, Derek Friedman, and Annette Wiener. Okay, it's Derek Freeman. Okay, he studied a village in Mexico. Mead studied the Samoa. Malinowski, I have told you, Trobriand Islands. These people revisited the field after 1960s and 70s again, and it erupted a well-known debate. In case of Robert Redfield, the village he presented as very egalitarian, very noble, very calm and composed. For individual like Oscar Lewis, we studied it as 7 or 8 years later. It was very different. It was very violent. People were very, cruel in their nature. But the thing is, the time at which these people were studying, they considered these primitive society as static in nature. But that was not the case. That these people are remnants of the past. They are constrained into time and space. Staticity. They did not take into consideration change. Social change occurs. Similarly, in case of Mead and Friedman, it is a very big debate. Margaret Mead and Derek Friedman's debate. Whatever Mead talked about sexuality and adolescence, Freeman completely ignored that. He completely resisted that. It was a very long debate. In case of Malinowski and Annette Wiener, 1976, when she went to study the trophy, and again she found that Malinowski did not consider women's voices at all, despite of the fact they have a very big role in economic life of the society. So this is how revisiting of field, it evolved again. A new dimension came into place. From conjectural history, then came your salvage ethnography, wherein salvage ethnography, just write this word, salvage, where it was more about preservation of the communities, preservation of their artifacts, preservation of their cultures. Came your veranda, anthropology, ethnography, came your field work into prominence. Okay, all of these evolved gradually. And the field, which was once considered as bounded, which was once considered as geographically limited, it has changed into a global village now. With linking of local to global, things have changed now. You cannot think of a village in India which is not impacted by foreign policies now. The aids which are given by UN, IMF, World Bank, they are given to particular states for development purposes. You cannot think about that. For example, take a village in Australia. Okay, you go from India and study that village in Australia. Can you ignore climate change? Can you ignore ecological changes which are happening at that place? Can you ignore patterns of globalization happening? That means it is interconnected now. So the bounded definition of field, it has changed. It has taken a new look with coming of more digital technologies, internet, where field sites have been shifted. Okay, that is one thing. Now let us have a look on the key tenets or the basic tenets of fieldwork. Stanley Barrett, he gives certain tenets with respect to your fieldwork. And if a question comes about fieldwork, straight away copy paste these, guaranteeing you highest marks in this question will be yours, whosoever writes about it. Because when Stanley Barrett writes, no one contradicts. That's something which is very special to Stanley Barrett in anthropology. Okay, this man, the way in which he writes anthropology, it's just phenomenal. So although there are 17, 18 of them, you need to remember 5, 7. That will be sufficient for you. Okay, I'll just write them point wise. First is, when you are in field, the first thing you do is participant observation. And participant observation is the defining feature of anthropological method. You stay with the community, you work with them, okay, you collaborate with them. Second is on reliance on information. Okay, so reliance on reliance on informants, and these informants may be at times your paid assistants whom you take along with you. Okay, they might be your key informants, who are the key persons which will which will help you in establishing connections with different set of groups, and they might be interpreters or translators of language. Okay, third thing will be the interview. Basically unstructured interview, that you do not have a defined structure. Okay, there are two kinds of interview, structured and unstructured. Okay, in structured we have a particular set of questions in front of us that we are going to ask. For example, if I send you to the president to ask questions, will you go haphazardly? No, you will have a list of questions that you will be asking. But in case of unstructured, when you are in the field, it is not that you have a interview guide with you. It is haphazardly asking questions, that how it is relevant, how that is relevant. Okay, that comes into fieldwork. Next is genealogies and life histories. You make genealogies and you write down life histories of individuals. Fifth is collecting census material and using a schedule. By collecting of census material, we mean we need to know how many people are there in the village, what kind of houses in which they live. This census is not the census like which normally which we do. Within this census, we also do village mapping. That what are the roads which are leading to a particular place. Okay, what are the key sites in that village, where the temples are located, where the king or the chief's palace is located. All of that. We identify how many members are there. Okay, in the family, what kind of occupation, all of that. So a detail and using a schedule basically. So schedule we use for people who are non-literate basically, who are not able to understand what is written. We speak to them and fill the entries. And these primitive people, as we have seen in evolution of fieldwork, for them schedule was the one thing. How many we have written? 5. Sixth is long period of field work. Okay, at least an year. Why? Because during an year there were certain annual cycles of certain events which are completed. For example, you grow a particular crop, say wheat, sugarcane. It is harvested once in a year. Sugarcane, wheats, they are harvested once in their annual crops. So there must be certain rituals which may be associated with their harvesting and their sowing season. So to collect data for those annual events, there might be certain rituals which might be associated during cutting of these. For example, take case of Vaisakhi. If someone is working in Punjab, the festival of Vaisakhi is very important. Okay, and if that individual decide to work just for 3 months, for example August, September and October, will he able to actually know what that harvesting of crop means to those people, until unless he does not participate in the festival of Vaisakhi? Okay, so annualized cycle of events, to understand them, that is why it is said that so have an extensive period of field work. Okay, learning the indigenous language. Okay, another important thing. Emphasis on actor's point of view. That means on amic rather than attic. Okay. Rather than the researcher's point of view, focus should be on actor's point of view, the people whom we are studying. Okay. Emphasis on informal rather than formal structures. Okay, that means you need to focus on the backstage, what is happening in the backstage, rather than what is happening at the front stage, because things which are happening at the backstage are the ones which led to the performance at the front stage. Okay, so there are two kinds of behaviors. One is the ideal behavior, one is the actual behavior. Ideal behavior is something which you expect that this might be happening, but when you go to field, the actual behavior then comes into place. Okay, that's one thing. So you need to understand that. Emphasis on validity rather than reliability. So your validity is the truth which is there. But reliability means once you perform the study again, results will be same. But that is not the case. It should more be about how much the study is valid, about how much that truth is valued, rather than reliability. That means, for example, if, as we gave example of Wiener's study of Troband Islanders, Oscar Lewis's study of Mexican village, results were different in both the cases. So that is why we need to focus on the truth. As in postmodernism, we need to know that there is no singular truth. Okay, so each person will have their own perspective. Okay? There is no single truth in contemporary ethnography. In postmodernist ethnography, bias in research means we have our inherent biases. We go with certain baggage of biases within us, that we might think that, okay, this my culture is superior, I have good command over language, all of that. We have biases in ourselves. So biases are accepted in postmodernist ethnography, but hiding of those biases is not. You present what is there. You manifest what your experiences are. Okay, that is why whenever anthropologists go to field, they have two kinds of diaries with them. When they do have their field notes, they always have two kinds of copies with them. In one copy they all write about the religion, magic, all those structures, and in one diary they write about their personal subjective experiences, that what they are feeling, how bored they are feeling. Malinowski's diary in a strict sense. Malinowski died in 1940s, 50s, yes. His diary was published in 1967 by his wife, and in that diary he was talking about how bored he feels, how he feels about the natives. So his personal experiences, which he did not mention in that Troband Islanders book. So people maintain those subjective experiences. Okay, so that is one case. Next is we have done 10. Okay, search for virgin territory. Okay, so in initial days, as I told you, that all these anthropologists, they were searching very alienated places which no one else can go, and when they speak, in their essays, in their lectures, they normally talk of their people. They use these kinds of words, that their people, their natives. As I told you that once you studied them, that place becomes sacrosanct and associated with that particular anthropologist. So searching for virgin territories, that they were being spread to different parts of the world, unexplored places. Okay, that is another thing in that. Exaggeration of the degree of cultural uniqueness. So by this statement we mean that making the unfamiliar familiar and the familiar strange to you. Making the unfamiliar familiar and the familiar strange to you. That means things which you do not know, let's find them out, and whatever you know, let's make them very exotic to you. For example, when we talk of marriage, how many types of marriage do you know? When I ask you, you can explain me, okay, there are polygamous and monogamous. You can tell me about, okay, there might be proscriptive and prescriptive marriages, all of that. But if I ask you, okay, tell me about marriages prescribed in Hinduism, There were 8 or 9 types of them. 7. De Vivah, Daitya Vivah, all of that. If I ask to tell about Muslim society, people, despite of knowing that these exist in them, they are familiar with them. But the moment I ask you to elaborate upon them, you will only have a bleak picture of that. Okay, you will only have a bleak picture of that, and things which you are not completely aware of. When a field worker will go, he will try to find them, and then they will discuss with you things which you take on face value. They will make that more special to you. That's what they're trying to do. So, and they exaggerate that cultural uniqueness. Okay, and there, just incorporate this point. So when in initial days, especially when time of Malinowski, Mead, they were brilliant people, no doubt. But somehow in the academic fraternity, in anthropology, there was a prevalence of something called genius syndrome. There was a prevalence of something called genius syndrome, that doing ethnography, exploring these virgin territories, looking out for people, selecting them to study, it required a different kind of aptitude and attitude to go and work there. You need to have a sheer brilliance of conducting field work. That's what a thought was there in academic circles, because everyone cannot go. If I send you to a Caribbean island which is completely isolated in 1910s and 20s, will you be able to do that? So there came something called a genius syndrome, that only genius people can do this kind of work. Okay, all of these things, they were there into that. Well, are enough, and you can also write about a comparative method instead of control laboratory experiment. Okay. Sample size is limited, as we all know. Okay, all of that. And after doing all this, there was a point where I was talking about reliance on informants. There is something called key informant. Key informant. When you go to field, this key informant is the one person who will introduce you with different set of group of people, who will help you to identify different sets of social beliefs, who will help you in translation of language at times, who will help you to guide you that what should you do, what should you not do. He will guide your behavior at times. So this is the person who is the chief source of your data. Okay, he is the chief source of your data. And there is a classic example of this. You have to mention about key informant. Okay, William Foot White's work, Street Corner Society. So William Foot White's work is an example where a person by the name Doc, this is one of the most famous key informant works. He is the key informant for White. The name of the ethnography is Street Corner Society, where the work is in US. Okay, where Italian origin gang members, okay, they used to live. So he worked among these gang members. So Doc, being a key informant, he introduced White to his family, to the members who used to live there. Okay, then only he was able to write this ethnography. So he provided access. Basically, the work of key informant is to provide access to the community. Similarly, Louis Vacante's work, Body and Souls, Notebook of an Apprentice Boxer. He worked in Chicago City. Okay, but that's of not. He worked in Chicago City. He learned boxing for 2 years, 3 years. He did a fight also, and there were people who helped him to gain entrance into the black community. He was the single white man among all those. So his coach, he really helped him in getting access to the community members. Okay, just write the name for reference. Body and Souls. Okay, notebook of an apprentice boxer. Louis Vacante. Along with this, when you go to field, there are two kinds of processes. Fieldwork involve two kinds of processes. One is journal and the other is specific. By journal process, we mean that you go to the field, you learn the language, you connect with community members. Basically, you build your network. Once you have built your network, you move to the specific processes, wherein you collect data on the specific social structure, religion, magic, kinship, everything what you want to do. So from general to specific is what fieldwork is about. Okay. So when you are in field, it becomes important to also have some ethics in place. Okay, ethics are important. You need to know certain ethics in place that do no harm to your to the community in which you are working, maintain anonymity of their identity. Okay, and also take informed consent. If you are interviewing someone, take their consent whether they are open to give you interview or not. Leave the option of leaving an interview or a study in between. Okay, when you are completed your study, inform them what you have written about it. They should have access to it. Take no objections from them, from the people who are there, who are who are your informants, all of them. So responsibility of ethics is very important. Okay, you cannot just go away with collecting data and being not responsible to community. So ethics in research is very important, and there is an American Anthropological Association's code of ethics in anthropology which is in place. So if question on fieldwork tradition come, so do mention that ethics as a part of fieldwork, it has continuously evolved. Okay, so do mention about it. It is very important. So now we'll move towards different methods. Okay. So just mention it. 4 attributes of data collection. Okay. First is confidentiality of sensitive issues. Okay, confidentiality of sensitive issues. Consent of people under study. The utility concerns means how the data will be used by you. Okay, and how the data will be transmitted. Knowledge and transmission of data. Okay, according to Srivastava. And Audrey Richards said that when fieldwork was evolving as a method, Richard said that if someone is working in Africa, they are experimenting a new technique in anthropology. So Africa was the key site of fieldwork during that point of time. Okay, so Richard said that if someone is working in Africa, they are experimenting with anthropological techniques. Okay. And in the end, to conclude, Eric Wolf he wrote a book by the name of Europe and People Without History. So he said that the kind of picture West has painted of these native indigenous people as primitive, as static, homogeneous, it is a moral success story. It is a moral success story of all those people, of the Britishers, of those anthropologists, isn't it? They have painted entire humanity apart from them into a single frame of barbarians, salvages, noble salvage, primitive minds. It is a moral success story of those people, of the white men. Eric Wolf talk. He says that is why the title of the book, I was referring that there were titles of the book. Europe and People Without History. For them, these people do not have history. They are just a remnant of past. They are just in a stage through which the Europeans have already passed. So it is a moral success story of all those people. So through field work in initial days, they were trying to do all these things. Clear? Field work, tradition in anthropology. Now we are in a postmodernistic ethnographic world. Huh? Yes, it can be. And also, yes, one more thing. It is a criticism also. Yes, and also just mention that there is a prevalence of multi-sided ethnography now. Okay. With more heterogeneity, with more globalization, your with more heterogeneity, I'll just write the name. चार्ज हो गया था. So what happens in multi-sited ethnography is you trace down a phenomena into different geographical locations. Like earlier we used to have a bounded field where you go to a geographical place, but what happens in multi-sited ethnography is you trace down a phenomena. For example, organ trafficking. To track organ trafficking, you have to move to certain places. Then only you will be able to track down the whole network. So for example, in this mention about Nancy Stafford Hughes and her work, the global traffic in human organs. Okay. So she tracked down the organ trafficking phenomena, okay, across different parts of the world. She traveled. So now we are more focusing on multi-sited ethnography in place, where we, use variety of methods, digital methods, your observation methods, all of them, and this is an example for that. So it's do mention about multi-sited ethnography. It's important in fieldwork, okay, and these are small things which will enhance your marks by 0.5, 0.1, 0.2, okay. These are important, especially these names and all. No, not different methods. See, multi-sited means many sites. Global traffic in human organs. The name is global traffic of or in. Global traffic in human organs. That means if I have to trace down organ trafficking, I have to go to different places. Will organ trafficking be happening only at a particular hospital? No. The organ will be coming from somewhere else. So I have to track down that journey, going to different places. Who are the people who are involved into that? Take case of Malinowski here, who stayed at Robben Islanders. You have to just pitch the tent and talk with the natives. Do not go to have outside that particular geographical domain. But in case of Nancy's work, she traveled across different geographical sites across the world. He traced down how organs are being trafficked. That means multi-sited work. Okay, you are doing that in that sense. Ethics we have talked about. Okay. That is why we talked about two kinds of knowledge. There is a guilty knowledge and there is a dirty knowledge. In guilty knowledge, we have information about the illegitimate activities which are happening in the field. Okay. And dirty knowledge means we are somewhere incorporated into that. So in field, you see, there are certain situations which you cannot express with anyone else explicitly. So the that somehow scratches your inner conscience. That is why you have a guilty knowledge as well as a dirty knowledge. Despite of the fact that you know that illegal trafficking is happening, you still cannot report it to the police. In the field, you know that things are happening. Okay, so all of that. In my research also, when I was working with these illegal performance enhancing drug suppliers, I know who are the people are. Okay, the people who supply performance enhancing drugs which are banned by WADA, World Anti-Doping Agency. I know the whole network from where they are coming. My work is multi-sided in nature. Who are the people involved? What is the amount they are giving? But I have that dirty knowledge with me. I have that guilty knowledge with me. Okay, so you have to, that is why confidentiality is important, anonymity is important in work. Okay, now moving ahead, we'll start with your methods first. Okay, we'll start with methods. Very simple methods are there in place, nothing to be worried about. Because topics of method, methodology and technique, very simple. Analysis and interpretation is more about how you present data in form of ethnography, monographs, books. What are the techniques you use? Graph, charts, pie charts, diagrams. Okay, content analysis, thematic analysis, all of that. So first let's see what are the kind of data we have. data collection tools. Okay, so from syllabus we have observation, schedules, questionnaire, case study, genealogy, life history, oral history, interview, and secondary source of data. So when we talk about let's begin with this interview. Okay, first we'll begin with interview. So interview basically means conversation with a purpose. Okay, as Srivastava defines it, he says that it is conversation with a purpose. Okay, you do interviews for a purpose itself. Okay, and it involves presentation of oral verbal stimuli and reply in terms of oral verbal responses. Okay, that means you are orally verbally stimulating someone to answer a question which you have asked, and the responses will be again in oral verbal systems. Okay, a very simple definition. Conversation with a purpose in which you have a oral verbal stimuli which in result give you oral verbal responses. Okay, as simple as that. This is about what interview is. There are two kinds: structured and unstructured. A structured interview is one in which you have what? In which you have anyone? You have a predetermined list of questions. Okay. So basically these are your formal in nature, formal interviews, where you have a predetermined set of questions, okay, which you are going to ask to someone. The nature of questions, the sequence of questions, the wording of questions, it is already predetermined. There is no change in that. And normally we use these kind of interviews for people who are not easily approachable to us. People who are not easily approachable to us, people who are from higher classes. Okay, we use this kind of method interviews. These are easy to administer, that you can administer them easily. They are precise in their nature. Okay, they are very precise because due to the structure of interview pattern. You have an interview guide with you. Interview guide means anyone? Interview guide? The person who is taking interview is called interviewer. The person who is giving interview is called interviewee. Okay. So an interview guide is a document in which you have all your questions mentioned. Okay, it is that. So more or less rigid in nature, inflexible, whereas your unstructured interviews are more flexible in nature. Okay, they are more flexible. The number of questions and the order of questions, it is up to you. How do you want to structurize them? Okay. The aim is to collect maximum information. The aim is to collect maximum information. That is the aim of unstructured interviews. There is a freedom to adjust your questions based on the environment which is prevailing around you, based on the interaction you are having. Okay. The level at which interviewee is responding, you can shape your question accordingly, because in that you don't have the scope of that. Okay. So that is why they are called informal interviews also. So normally in ethnography or fieldwork we do unstructured interviews, because you cannot interact with everyone in field in a structured way. You cannot go and ask similar questions to each individual. That will not suffice you. Asking a village headman questions about politics and asking a labor question about politics will reveal very different understandings. So you need to have unstructured interviews that in place. So for people who are more unapproachable, unreachable at times, you use that, but for other points you use that. Similarly, we have other kinds of interview, individual interview, group interviews. Okay, telephonic interviews are also there, all of them. Okay. So now let us see some merits of interview. So when we conduct an interview, see, there are so many techniques which we use, such as probing. Probing means to stimulate the interviewee. What happens is, like in between, if you must have seen so many interviews. Just give me an example. An interview. Huh? Coffee with Karan? Yes, UPSC interview. Anyone more? So what happens is, when you probe someone during an interview, you try to bring out more information. You use words like okay, you use words like yes. This makes the other individual believe that you are interested in that. If someone says okay, if you are giving UPSC interview, the interview board asks you, tell him about fieldwork. You say, sir, in fieldwork this has been a tradition. There has been a colonial tradition in fieldwork. There has been a post-colonial tradition. Now we have a postmodernist tradition. You said that much. You know that you have said well. The moment they will ask, okay, what is postmodernism in anthropology? They are probing you to answer more. You are being probed by the set of questions. At times what happens is, if you are not able to recall something, they will assist you out with, okay, recall it, think about it, are you sure about it? Things like that. What are they? They are probing strategies to bring out the information from you. Okay, so there are different probing methods also which are involved in interview process. It seems it is very easy on TVs, videos and all of that, but the person who is actually trained in conducting anthropological interviews, they are very much informed about the minute details of how a person is reacting to the words which he is or she is speaking. Accordingly they change them. So the first merit is, you get more information with greater depth. You get more information with greater depth. Second is, it helps in establishment of rapport. Rapport means identifying yourself with the field, situating yourself in the field, developing a capital of yours in the field. What is capital here? Developing a social capital means creating an image of yours, creating a good image, coming into the good books of the people around you, getting yourself familiarized with the environment around you. So when you are interacting with people, in which process, journal or specific process? Tell me. There are two processes in fieldwork, journal and specific. Where do we establish rapport? In journal or specific? Yes, exactly, in journal process, because that is the time when we are learning about the field, the location, the people, the community, the maps, the language. Okay. Third is observation method, which is your participant observation. It can be applied simultaneously. So when you are interviewing someone, you are also observing them. You are also observing the kind of non-verbal communication they are using to convey certain messages. How they are using time, how they are using kinesics, haptics. What is haptics? What is haptics? Touch. Kinesics, proxemics, chronomics, time. It is useful for obtaining personal information of the individual. You get to know about them. Okay. Interview method, it is flexible and you have opportunity to restructure questions. You have opportunity to restructure questions. The issue of non-responsiveness, it remains low, because if you are in direct contact with the other person, except for the fact that you do not know how to take interview, response will always be high. Okay, that is one case. The sample can be controlled more effectively. Okay, sample can be controlled more effectively. Misinterpretations can be avoided, because if the person is sitting in front of you, you can clearly ask them whether to clarify what they are trying to convey. Okay. Catching off guard reaction, meaning if in the interview they ask you something very unexpected, so what will the reaction be? Whether you are stable into your emotions or not. About walk off. So if for example, if a normal conversation is going in an interview, they are asking about anthropology, suddenly they started asking about your past relationships. They starting asking about who are your crushes, who is your childhood crush. So, similar, exact at that moment, your reaction will be very different, because it has the frame of mind in which you were, it has completely shifted in a fraction of a second, and that is the time they want to see how stable your reactions are. Because stabilization of reaction is very important in those situations. Okay, so catching off guard reactions and collection of supplementary informations. You can also collect supplementary informations which is normally not available when if you are not meeting with that person. That. So these are some of the merits of interview. We will not go into depth about how to conduct an interview, this and that. We need not to know that. Okay, just see the merits, and now we'll move to the demerits of interview process. Okay, because normally they will ask this in 15 marks, if in case it is asked, not for 20. But maybe if they ask how to conduct an interview, or write a note on interview, most likely in your notes everything will be there. It's very simple. You just need to frame good number of questions. They should be in sequence, in structured or unstructured, Okay, that's one. Now the demerits. The first is about the supervision issues. We never know how the individual is taking the interview. So you need to supervise them at times, okay, who are not mature enough to take those interviews. Second is about your issues of training and selection. Third is, it is expensive. Especially if the sample is large and spread in a wider geographical area. Okay, it is expensive in that sense. Next is, there are biases of interviewer as well as the respondent in place. Okay, if someone say something to responding in my answer, I might get triggered out. If I do not know how to conduct an interview, if I do not know the art of interview, I might get triggered out with that, and my biasness might come into place. Okay. Okay, tell me, is it true that? No, that's different. Yes. There was this study by Scarlett Epstein. So she was conducting an interview. Scarlett Epstein or something. So there was this old lady. She asked her. She said, while conducting interview, she said that the moon, it looks the same in US also. And the lady said, no, you are lying. During that interview, because they have not seen that outer reality apart from their own world. So during interviews, such kind of narratives come into place, and they shock these people who are coming from foreign, because India is a black hole for anthropological research. It has so much to offer to them. Okay, so things like that come into interview. This is a small example I got reminded of. There might be some systematic errors. There might be overstimulation of respondent when they try to give you imaginary stories. It happens when they get overstimulated in their reactions. They try to give you imaginary stories. Okay, that has happened, just to make feel you good. That is one thing. Okay. And there is an absence of rapport. You do not have a pre-existing rapport with the individual at times, so that impacts the relation between you and the interviewee. Okay, that's one thing. It is time consuming. It takes time, like 2 hours, 3 hours at times. Okay, then you have to make a transcript of it, all of that. And approach to certain groups. So when you approach certain groups, for example, a higher social group in a particular village community, or the tribal chief, it is quite possible that you have to maintain a dignity of asking questions. So you might not be able to get whatever you want. I gave you an example in culture and communication, if you remember, that there is a custom in which area? In Pacifics, where you have to, address the chief using a respect language. If by default you do not use it, or by intention you do not use it, you will be punished for that. So it limits your interaction in that sense. There might be certain taboos with respect to the words which might not be used. Okay, all of that. Systematic error. Anyone? What might the systematic errors be there in interview? Who will tell? Exactly. What happens in systematic errors is that while you are framing your interview guide, while you are framing your interview schedule, it is not in a linear sequence. The questions are unrelated completely. The data which will be generated is off track completely. It is not what you expected from a structured interview. So that means you did not did a pilot testing, as we call it. So whenever we use these methods, we need to do a pilot testing, as we say. So to ensure what are the drawbacks, what are the advantages of that, and what need to be refined into that. Okay, so that data which will be collected, it is more authentic in nature. Okay, so these are the demerits of this process. Next is your questionnaire. So it is considered one of the main techniques for collection of data in research, and it helps the researcher to obtain personal information of the respondent. So it is a set of questions. So questionnaire, sir, different interview panel may have different opinion for the same candidate. It is biasness or error? It is biasness. It's not error. Not just the interview panel. At times, the examiner has biasness for good handwriting. They give good marks to people who write, in a very good handwriting. And it's a common fact, not just here, everywhere. People who have a good handwriting, they definitely get a few good marks compared to people like us who write like that. No, just joking, I just write like that on this only. So it's a bias basically, and bias is an inherent characteristic of human being and you cannot remove that. Okay, that is why the debate of subjectivity versus objectivity comes into place in fieldwork tradition also. So now moving ahead, so a questionnaire, it consists of a set of questions in a particular form and order which the respondent have to fill by themselves. Okay. A set of questions arranged in a particular format and order which the respondent has to fill by themselves. Okay. In a questionnaire, there are two kinds of questions. One is open-ended and one is close-ended. Okay. So in open-ended, the respondent is free to write his own thoughts and views, whereas in closed-ended, you have to be very specific to the things which you have been asked. For example, in open-ended question, if I ask you, why do you want to be last question for a questionnaire, why you want to be an IS? You will say, serving the country, this and that, so many reasons. But the moment it goes close-ended, I will give you 4 options. You have to select one from them. Or last option can be all of them. It can be like that. So now the scope is limited in that sense. Okay, that happens is that.
But when there is a language barrier, doesn't every questionnaire becomes an interview?
to whom these questionnaires are sent? People who are literate.
There is a language barrier. There is this questionnaire that the anthropologists have. Doesn't it become an interview because somebody is going to have to interpret and they are going to have to write it themselves?
See, questionnaire is normally mailed to respondents who are literate and able to read and write. And if an individual is sending it to, for example, say a group of people for whom they want to understand the consumer behavior, so he must be knowing his sample size, that these are the sample size to whom I have to send. There is something called sample. From the whole of this earth, which is the universe of research, you will take out a sample through certain sampling techniques. And that sample will be the representation of this universe, of that earth. And that sample you will select based on certain criteria, that they should know English. Then only you will send it to them. If there is a barrier of translation, they have already taken into consideration that thing before sending it. That is why pilot testing is done, to remove those barrier of language. Okay, in that sense. So your close-ended can be in form of yes or no. They can be in form of scales 1 to 5. Okay, all of that. But open-ended are just straight away let it okay answer that. So questionnaires are basically of 4 type. They are structured as I have told you, and unstructured, semi-structured, which is a mix of 1 and 2, mix of structured and structured, and 4th is your pictorial. Your pictorial questionnaire. So here are pictures are given. Okay, to understand that. Now let us have a look on the merits of questionnaire. Structured means the questions are prepared in advance. They are in order. Unstructured means you can modify them accordingly as per your requirements. Okay. Merits. First merit is, it is low cost. Nowadays it has become very low cost due to coming of internet. Okay. Second is your not easily approached individuals can be reached. Okay, if you want to conduct a survey of billionaires, you can send them questionnaires. Okay, so it's up to them whether to answer or not. That's a different thing. Okay, so a large sample can be reached out. Okay, so your results for a large sample can come into place. It is free from your interview bias, that the bias which comes in interview, inherent bias with respect to age, sex, gender, social settings, it is free from that because you are not interacting with the person face to face. Okay, that is one thing. And one of the most efficiently used method in social research, in anthropological research, is a questionnaire. Okay. Questionnaire is sent to people via mail. Written, sent via mail. Mail might be a post, mail might be a email, it might be a digital mail, it might be anything. Here, person to person contact is not there. You are sending it to someone via post or something. But when it comes to interview, you are sitting with the person in front of you. You are talking with that person either through telephonic call or through face to face. So the difference lies in the approach. Okay, that is face to face or voice to voice. Here you have mailing of that questionnaire to people. Okay, you mail it to different people. Now the demerits. First is, it is one of the slowest technique to obtain results from. We never know when we will get back our questionnaires. Okay. Second is, it can only be administered on educated and literate sample. Okay, people who are educated and literate, who are cooperating in nature. There is an inbuilt inflexibility. Okay. Also, control over questionnaire is lost once it is sent. Once you have sent it, the control has been lost. That's not case with interview, where you can, still make about things which if you have left the path of interview, if things get distracted from that. The replies may be ambiguous. Ambiguous replies might come. Okay, people, if you are asking in an open-ended question that, for example, you have asked how does a fan work. You have asked that. Some of them might write, okay, it works with electricity. Some might write what? Some might write a joking answer for that. Okay. For example, a question comes, someone asks in a questionnaire, where will be the UPSC exam come from? You will write from books. Someone will say, no, it will come from comics. So these are kind of ambiguous replies. Okay. One of our teacher told us someday. We asked in 10th class, sir, where will the exam come from? Science exam. He said it will come from newspaper. Now we realize that the exam comes from newspaper itself. Isn't it the case? Science and technology, it comes from newspaper. Sunday edition of Hindu. Isn't it the case? But we were child at that point of time. We did not realize the actual value of that statement. Okay. Then you have omission of replies, that people do not reply to complete questionnaire, they leave out things. And last is, are respondents truly representative of the answers they are giving, whether it is the same person to whom we have sent the questionnaire giving the answer, or is someone else giving the answer to us. Okay, are they truly representative of that? So representation is very important, because when we talk about sampling, representation is one thing which we definitely need to have strong enough. So sampling is very important in that case. Next is your schedule. So schedule is basically filled by your enumerators. It is again a set of defined questions. Okay. Asked by researcher, enumerators, and are filled in by themselves. So the main difference between questionnaire and schedule is, here it is the interviewer, the researcher, or the enumerator who fills the questionnaire. You have a set of questions with you. Okay, you yourself fill them by asking the other person. Just like the census. Census people come to your house, they have a form with them. Do they give you the form? No. They ask you your name, gender, occupation, what kind of equipments you have in your house, car, bike, etc., annual income. They fill it by themselves. The moment they give it to you to fill, it will become a questionnaire. But when the enumerator, the researcher is filling by themselves, it becomes your schedule. Okay, and it is good for establishing rapport comparatively. Okay, so when you are talking with someone, when you are interacting with the other person, you can identify additional or supplementary information of that individual. So if I ask you, okay, how many attempts you have given, you will say 1. Then I'll ask what might in the questionnaire or the schedule. The only question was how many attempts you have given. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. None of them. You said 1. But additionally, I can ask you, why did you not succeed in clearing that exam? So you will then tell me a story. You will tell me a story about that. That will help me understanding you as an individual better. Okay, that happens into that case.
Structure, interview, and schedule.
See, there is something called interview schedule. When you are filling a schedule, you also conduct interview at times.
Both are very closely related.
They are validated. That is why let's look at the types of schedule. First is your observational schedule. Okay. So they are designed to study specific situations. There are rating schedules. Just remember this name, okay? Observational schedule, rating schedules, evaluation schedules, and interview schedules. It is census. Now, another important part is difference between questionnaire and schedule. Probability is high to be asked in exam. Okay. There are so many similarities and dissimilarities. First is the questionnaire. It is sent through mail, and in case of schedule, it is filled by your enumerator. ठीक है, नहीं हो रहा, बता देना. Second is it is cheap, economical, and it does not require any field staff as such. Okay, but that is not the case in this schedule. It is expensive. Okay, so you need trained enumerators on which you have to spend money for their training. Okay. Third is there is high rate of non-response. Low rate of non-response, but bias of interviewer is there. Okay, there is a bias of interviewer which is there. Video stop, it will start again. Just is it visible now? Okay, it is slow in nature and you have to send reminders to people to please fill up the survey. It is on time because you are actually working with person in face-to-face situation. Sir, not working, but my schedule. I will let's first look at the difference between questionnaire and schedule. Then we'll get back to schedule again. Okay, don't worry. Here the identity of respondent is not known. Okay, despite of the fact you are writing or you are asking the other person to write their name, there are always ambiguous replies. You must have seen so many Aadhaar cards having different kind of names, all those. So even your these examination hall tickets, have you seen all those? Anyone? Examination hall tickets with having ambiguous identities, Shah Rukh Khan, Imran Hashmi. I've seen that. There was this case in Bihar where on examination ticket, the name of Imran Hashmi and his photo was there. Things like that. So identity of respondent is not known. It is known in this case. You know the identity because you are contacting with the person. So I am writing here in short. You do not write just known and that. Okay. Elaborate upon it in exam. Just do not leave it known. What is known? Identity. Okay. Identity. Next is there is lack of personal contact. Here it is present. Okay, the personal contact, it is present. Or there is direct contact. Another is it is used when respondent is literate and cooperative in nature. It can be used in both cases. Even though the individual is not literate, they do not know what is actually written, you can read out to them, you can make them explain. Okay, so wider and more representative sample, it is possible in that case. You can send questionnaire to thousands of people at a single point of time, but this is not possible in case of schedule because you have to yourself fill that data. Okay, it remains difficult. Okay. Next come your incomplete, ambiguous information. Incomplete and ambiguous information is possible if people are not able to understand the questions properly. Okay, but in case of schedules, your enumerators are there to correct any misinterpretation. but that is not the case with questionnaire. The success of questionnaire, it lies on its quality of questions that has been asked and responses received. The quality of questions that has been asked, okay, and the responses received. Whereas in case of schedule, it lies on the honesty and competence of enumerators. Okay, competency and honesty of enumerators. Here, method of observation, it is not possible, but here observation can be applied simultaneously. Okay, it can be applied simultaneously. So the people who have missed schedule, by schedule what we means is, where is it? It has lost. So what happens in case of schedule is, a set of questions are being asked. Okay, just like a questionnaire where it is mailed to different people, the same questionnaire is with the researcher himself, and that person will ask the respondent those questions. Okay, so for example, just like your census survey, okay, it is a interview schedule. It's basically a schedule where a group of people come to you, they ask you, they fill that with themselves. Okay, that happens in case of schedule. Whereas in case of questionnaire, it is sent via mail, people fill it themselves. In case of schedules, it is the enumerator or the researcher who fill it by themselves. Okay, now we'll move towards secondary data. Okay, so secondary data, it's basically your already available data. Slide is there before different slides. Anish, which slide do you want to see? This one? मुझे भी नहीं पता. This one? Slide before the difference slide. Okay, this one. Set of defined question asked by research enumerators and are filled by themselves. 4 kinds: observational schedule, rating schedules, evaluation schedules, and interview schedules. Okay. Normally questions on secondary data are not asked in exam, but still we need to know. Okay, because it is a tool of data collection. So secondary data is basically the data which is already available to you, which is collected by someone else. Okay. Suppose, for example, I want to understand the role of religion in society, okay, or I want to understand the functional theory, anthropological theory of functionalism in practical. I know Malinowski has done that work. I know Radcliffe Brown has done that work. Okay, so I can refer to them because the work has already been done. It is already available to me. Similarly, for example, if I want to understand the phenomena of say this tribe caste continuum, I want to understand sacred complex. LP Vidyarthi has already done work for them on sacred complex. There are so many sacred complex of Bishanpur is there, Saraswati's work. So if I want to have, if I want to work on sacred complex, I can refer to these works to get an understanding of how they have been conceptualized, what was the nature of their field work, what was the nature of questions they have addressed to. So it will give me a base of understanding how that particular topic or concept has been understood worked upon, and what are the theoretical methods or theoretical frameworks which has been used for that. Okay. Your secondary data can be in form of published or an unpublished state. Okay. Secondary data, it can be published and unpublished. Now, the published data, it can be your government reports, example, your Khaka report, administrative report, ARC report, Administrative Reforms Commission report. Any other example? Government reports example? NFHS? More? Which one? Strategy of India. India at 75, that's also a government document, okay. All of that, you know, these reports are there. Reports by central, state governments, local governments, all of that. Reports by foreign governments and organizations, such as, example, HDI report, Human Development Index report, Religious Freedom report, more, Ease of Doing Business report, Press Freedom report, all of that, they are published by different governments and organizations across the world. Okay. PGID, ARC. What is PGID? Anyone? PGID. Public Governance Index. PGI is any Law Commission report, yes. Yes, all of that. There are books, magazines, newspapers, all of that. Book like India 2020, India 2021, the famous book. You know that? Have you seen that book? No one? India 2022, India 2021. Yearbook, Indian yearbook. अब याद आ गया, year से याद नहीं आता. All of that. Your magazines like Yojana, Kurukshetra. Do read the last month Yojana, it's important. Okay, why it is important? Yes, because it's for tribals. Okay. Research by different scholars and universities which are there. It is also secondary literature which is there for you. Historical documents. Okay, all of that. Apart from performance grading index for districts. Anyone? Performance grading index for districts. Full form. So, apart from published data, data are also published on websites also, like your RBI's policy data. It is published on websites also. Monetary policy, it is published online. All of that. But when it comes to unpublished data, it can be in form of diaries, letters, unpublished biographies, autobiographies. Like when Malinowski died, his diary of Fieldwork, it was not published till that time. So in 1967, his diary was published, diary in a strict sense. Okay. There are so many other unpublished data you will find in villages where people who have fought in wars, they have their diaries maintained. They are unpublished. Okay. So there are published and unpublished kind of data. And before using secondary data, we must see that it possesses the following characteristics. First is reliability of data. That what is the source of that data, that from where it is coming. Okay. Who have collected that data, whether proper methodology was being used or not for collection of data. Recently which report has been stopped? It has been stopped because of faulty methodology which is being implemented in that. It was published by World Bank right here. So it has been stopped because the methodology was flawed. So you need to have that source, that from where it is coming. It is important. You cannot rely on conjectural sources like evolutionists. Who collected that data? Do they have ideological formulations for them, whether it is very specified data? And for example, this press freedom data, happiness index, all of them, do they come to you for asking about happiness? Never they have come to us. Never. So who are the people who are they contacting? For, analyzing freedom, state of freedom in country, state of religiousness in country, who are the people they are contacting? We never know. But then they will be the representatives of this country in that sample, and based on their perspectives, the reports will be published in the end. I don't think we far so bad in certain rankings across the world. I don't think that. Situations might be different, but I do not think in that sense, because we are doing much better than those reports are presenting in front of us. Okay, situation might be different for different geographical areas, but it's subjective in nature. As our external minister says, that who are you to give us certificates for that? State of democracy, we are so bad, so like in a state of flawed democracy, flawed and all of that. So that's why to take a hard stance rather than a soft stance in international diplomacy becomes important. And okay, so all of that. Second is suitability of data. So the data which you are referring to is suitable for your own research or not. So if you want to work on functionalism, you need to refer to people like Malinowski, Radcliffe Brown, Raymond Firth, all of them. You cannot go to people like E.B. Tyler and L.H. Morgan to study functionalism. Okay, you need to have a suitability of that data, whether it is suiting to your research goals or not. Okay. And third is adequacy of data. Means it is available in adequate. It is like it is not spread haphazardly here and there in random shifts, like it is only published in US or in a small geographical area. It should have adequacy of data. Like if I want to refer to if I want to study population growth in India, I have census reports from 1891 onwards, so I have adequate data for that. If I want to understand sex ratio, I have adequate data for that. So adequacy of data is also important in that sense. Okay. So when we talk about methodology, so we need to know, we'll move forward into that. Okay. Dr. A.L. Bowley, he says that it is never too safe to take published data and statistics on their face value. It is never too safe to take any published data or report at their face value without knowing their meaning and their limitations. Okay, it is never safe to take any published document related to statistics, related to report, without actually knowing its meaning and limitations. That's become important for us. Okay, so this is for your secondary data, as we say. Time khatam ho gaya. It's 2:30, and still we are left with genealogy and observation. Genealogy, observation, and life history and oral history. Yeah, sure. Just moving before that, let's just look at two things. Okay. Just let's have a look at three things. Last, technique, method and methodology. Okay, just 5 more minutes, just please. So your technique is a systematic procedure or formula or a routine by which a task could be accomplished, or it is skillfulness in the command of fundamentals deriving from practice and familiarity. So your techniques involves, like interview is a technique. Okay, interview is a technique through which you collect data basically. Okay, so skillfulness and in the command of fundamentals deriving from practice and familiarity. So it's basically a formula, a method, or not method, formula or a technique, all of that through which you collect data. So interview is your technique. Okay, method, when it comes to method, way of conducting and implementing research. Okay, a way of conducting and implementing research, basically a set of techniques, when they are used they becomes your method. Okay, these techniques, when they combine, they gives you a method. Okay, so for example, when we talk about ethnography as a method, what we are saying when we say participant observation as a method, when we say this, for example, ethnography only, we say ethnography is a method. So ethnography incorporates different kind of techniques, visual techniques such as clicking photographs, making videos, doing interviews, unstructured interviews, filling of schedules, filling of questionnaires. So they all are techniques. All those techniques are way of conducting and implementing research. Okay, they becomes your method. And methodology is basically your science and philosophy behind all research. Okay, so it is basically your systematic and theoretical analysis of methods. Systematic and theoretical analysis of your methods. So method is basically your culmination of one or more techniques. Okay, one or more techniques is your method. Last rank of Indian Environmental Performance Index show biasness. Yes, exactly. They are saying that India is at the very bottom of Environmental Performance Index, the EPI index, but that is not the case actually. You think we are at the very bottom of Environmental Performance Index? That should not be the case. Okay. So your technique, it incorporates tools. Okay. So a device, instrument required to use in a particular research to study particular aspect. Okay. So we are left with a few topics. I'll try to cover up in next class. One is your analysis and interpretation of data, genealogy, life history, oral history, and participant observation. Okay, those are very small, So genealogy is important, life history is important, and case study is also there. So we still have a long way to go. Okay, I hope things are clear, simple, nothing to be ambiguous about in all these things. Okay, we will elaborate upon these a bit more. Okay. EPI ये इसका है CC
They are maintaining.
Okay, Anish, I'll do that. Don't worry. Once we are done with this chapter, we'll do that.